The United Kingdom, a land of magic and the worst heat in the world, according to them, gross unseasoned slop that they call food. But we're not talking about the food, we are talking about the cryptids, especially the weird cryptids that come from the UK. And believe me, there are some real doozies in there. Now our first cryptid on this list is from the land of bagpipes and haggis. That's right, it is Scotland. And speaking of haggis, our first cryptid is the wild haggis. Now, you may be thinking, isn't haggis just sheep organs? No, you're completely wrong. It is actually from the animal known as the wild haggis. Now, the wild haggis is really cute. Here's a picture of it. Adorable. But it's a little rodent, and it is the main source of haggis. Now, one of the most interesting things about this creature is that it has two legs that are longer than the rest. And you may be thinking, yeah, that's either the front or the rear legs, makes sense, right? Well, you're wrong again. It is actually the right or left side legs that are longer than the others. And that differentiates between the different species of haggis. One has the longer legs on the right side and the other has it on the left side. And the reason it has the legs that are longer on the left side or right side is because its home is on the hillside. So basically like these giant cliffs in Scotland. And it's so they can run along the hills, but they can only run in one direction. And that is either clockwise or counterclockwise, because you can't run if you're tilted, and these creatures are just level. With the differences in how they run, that makes it so that both species cannot intermingle and have babies. There is no such thing as crossbreeding in this species, even though they are so similar, but their differences just cannot make it happen. Now, our next cryptid on this list is from a country that still has a king, and that is England. And this cryptid is the Owlman of Cornwall. Now, you've probably heard of the Owlman, but if you have not, then let's get into the story of the Owlman. On April 17th, 1976, two young girls were on vacation, not holiday, and they claimed to have seen a large feathered birdman flying over St. Maunan and St. Stephen's Church. And when the girls told their father, and upon hearing their story, he ended up leaving vacation early, because I guess the Owlman was completely terrifying. And another story comes from the same year of 1976. And on July 3rd, two more girls who knew about the Owlman story, so keep that in mind. Well, they were camping when they saw a large owl-sized man with pointed ears, glowing eyes, and black pincher-like claws. And there have been multiple sightings of the Owlman around that church. And some of the sightings took place in 1978, 1979, 1989, and 1995. And a loud owl-like noise was heard in 2000. However, most people believe that it is just an owl that these people are seeing and nothing spectacular about it, just an owl. But others, like me, believe that England just stole Mothman from us. However, I don't think it is Mothman. I think they just stole the story, because usually when Mothman is seen, there is a unusual, horrible event happening, like the bridge collapse in Point Pleasant. And we do not have that with the Owlman, so I doubt it is Mothman. But still a weird cryptid. Now, our next crazy cryptid on this list is from Ireland. And I just made a video on Irish cryptids, so go check it out. And this cryptid is the Far Darrig, which translates to the Red Man. And the Far Darrig is very similar to the leprechaun, but instead of green, the Far Darrig has red clothes and bright red skin, and is nothing like the leprechaun at all. The Far Darrig loves mischief and trickery. Now, you might be thinking, don't leprechauns like trickery? Well, let me put this in terms that we might understand. The leprechaun is more like the guy who pretends to fart in public to get other people's reaction. And the Far Darrig is Jack Doherty, and out for terror on society. Yeah, the Far Darrig is Jack Doherty of the cryptid world. So, everybody hates them. But the Far Darrig has better hair. Now, the Fardarg is also known as rat boys because their skin is very dirty and very hairy, just like a rat's. And depending on the description, they may also have rat tails and pointy noses. Now, the Fardarg's favorite pastime is kidnapping people, and it is known to carry a very large sack behind it that is large enough to fit a grown man and a child together. And there are some very dark things that the Fardarg does to people. Now, when he kidnaps a man, it is actually very tame, which is scary. He just locks them up for a while and then torments them and then lets them go. But when he kidnaps a child, he raises it as a fairy and replaces the child with something known as a changeling that would grow up being crooked and ugly, whatever that means. And it could not perform even the most basic task, but it would be really good at music. Now, I'm not even going to think about the dark history of that. That is probably sad and terrifying what people use that excuse for. So before I start crying, let's move on to our next cryptid. And this one is from the land of impossible to say and spell names. That is right, this is the country of Wales. Now, I doubt I will be able to say this name, but I'm going to try for you guys anyway. This cryptid's name is the Lamhigindwr. Lamhigindwr. Here's it spelled out for you. Or it is the water leaper. And this beast lives in swamps, ponds, rivers, and lakes. And it has to be one of the weirdest looking ones I have ever seen. Here's a picture of it. And it is described as a giant legless frog with bat-like wings and a long tail with a stinger on the end of it. And it is a really good swimmer, but when it is tired of lakes or rivers, it would jump out of the water and use its wings to find a new waterway. Now, the water leaper was also a very dangerous predator who would feed on fish and even sheep that would wander too close to the water. And its way of hunting is crazy. Some say that even if you look at it, it will kill you. And let's not forget about the venomous stinger on the end of its tail, but it doesn't even need that because its main way of hunting is by screeching. That's right, it would let off a high-pitched screech that would stun anything that hurt it. Then it would leap out of the water and drag whatever it was, including fishermen, to their death. Now, if any on today's list could be real, I think it is this one. It sounds almost exactly like a stingray, except for the screeching. But maybe that was the men who saw it and then got terrified and then screeched, and they're like, oh no, that was the beast. That's my theory. Now, our final cryptid for today comes from the Isle of Man in the UK, which I had never heard of, but it's apparently a British isle that has its own government, so I don't understand the UK as a whole. I'm American, I don't need to know those things. But their cryptids are weird, so that's why we're looking at them. And this is by far the weirdest one on the list today. And that is Jimmy Squarefoot. And he is a bipedal, pig-headed man with giant tusks and square feet wrapped in cloth. Now, he may look terrifying, but he is a golden retriever of a cryptid. Very peaceful and just wandered around like nothing. But his origin story is one of the weirdest, not for the fact that anything crazy happened, but more for the fact that it seems like it has nothing to do with him at all. Now, everywhere I looked online, it kept seeing the same story, and I can't find the importance of it. So, if any of you know why this story is important to the Jimmy Squarefoot lore, please let me know, because it does not make sense to me. But here's that story. Now, Jimmy used to be a giant pig named Squarefoot. And he was owned by a foer, which is literally just a rock-throwing giant that lived in Cronk Yin Iri Laha. I know I'm saying these names wrong. I don't speak whatever language they speak or whatever words these are. And in an altercation with his wife, he pelted a rock at her head, and one is now Craig Yin Aran, and the other is a wide dropped at Clowfer to the south. So I know I got those names wrong. I am sorry about that. But what does that story have to do with Jimmy Squarefoot? Like, give me, like, you know, something like a witch turned him into a beast, or he was a man and then now a pig-headed dude, or a pig that turned into a man, but something went wrong. Why can't we have that? Why do we have this weird story? So maybe I don't know the history of the Isle of Man, but please, if you know, please let me know in the comments. And with that, thank you for watching. If there is anything you want me to cover in a future video, please leave it in the comments. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe. It will really help me out. Thank you. Bye.